Are you ready to set your authentic self free? Welcome to Your Unapologetic Life, the podcast with me, Morgan Barkus. This podcast is full of my personal stories, advice, and strategies, as well as book recommendations to help you ditch comparison and society's standards for us women so you can finally reveal who you truly are. Are you ready to live out loud? Let's get this party started. Vulnerability is a strength. How long did it take you to learn that? It took me 30 years. I'll take you back to kindergarten, though. I was riding the school bus, and I was fairly notorious for being extra. Even at that age, my paternal grandmother would buy me faux fur coats, and I would wear those babies to school. Loved it. Anything extra, a little bit flashy, glamorous. It's always been in me. On this particular morning, riding the school bus, and there were two boys behind me. I knew them. They lived up the highway from me. One was a redhead fraternal twin of another guy and his best friend. I don't remember what they were saying to me. I do know they were picking on me and picking at my jacket. And I must have turned around and said something sassy, and it was enough to cause the bus driver to stop the bus and walk back and separate us, made the redhead kid sit with me. I was so embarrassed that I had caused trouble, that I was in trouble. I'm definitely the firstborn, type A, always want to do the right thing. And in that moment, I was just so embarrassed that I had caused this trouble. And I sat on the window part of the seat. I was looking out the window and my eyes were just burning. And I was thinking in my head, don't let him see you cry. Don't let him see you cry. Don't let him see you cry. Why? In that moment, I could have looked at that kid and said, hey, your behavior made me feel XYZ. And what kid has that capability? And sometimes what adults even are taught that. And it wasn't until I was in graduate school, literally the last class, last day, I'm presenting my paper. We had to do an internship for a year while in school. So I had already gone through 2 years of classes, then it was the third year classes and an internship, and presenting my last project. It was a 50-page paper on my internship and what I learned, on the different therapies, or excuse me, the theories of therapy, and who I was as a therapist. And the professor that I had him for other classes, and I've been knowing him for 3 years, and I had a lot of great professors when I was in graduate school. And this moment and this professor has stood out to me more than almost any other lesson in my life, and definitely the most significant lesson I had while I was in graduate school was his comment about vulnerability. There I am in front of this entire class, and I had just presented my paper, and I felt like I did a good job, and I was feeling confident about my work. And he said some really great things, some good feedback, told me basically, Morgan, you're going to be a great therapist. I do have words of wisdom for you. And he said, I would invite you to be vulnerable. You walk around with this shell, and you have this tough girl attitude, and I know underneath that hard shell is a big mushy gushy person who cares a lot. And if you want other people to be vulnerable with you have to be vulnerable with them. And I had been vulnerable in my journals, if you will. I had gone to therapy multiple times by the time I got to 30 years old. I was willing to go there in moments of my life, or certain compartments of my life. I was very good at compartmentalizing. And I think back to even when I was in my last year of high school and very much all the way through college, just struggling with disordered eating and depression and just really feeling lost and unhappy. And I had people years later say, I never in a million years would have known that. And it's true. I smiled and I got straight A's and I went to every class and I did all the things. I showed up in my life. I mean, I was very good at presenting put together and I didn't show my vulnerability in public. And oftentimes even with my own friends, I didn't truly just break down, let it go. And I don't mean bawling in front of them, but just truly just expressing, here's how I'm feeling right now. I'm struggling. And I think that it was one to appear tough and resilient, tenacious, and also some people aren't comfortable with vulnerability. They are not vulnerable. And then when someone else is vulnerable, they don't know how to handle it. If you've ever seen someone truly let themselves feel their feelings and they cry, oftentimes people will try to stop them and say, you're okay, you're okay. Here's a tissue. You're going to be fine. And they don't just sit with that person and let them cry. And I have since learned on that very impactful afternoon in graduate school, last day, last class, that feedback changed my life and it changed how I presented myself to other people and also how I am with other people. I let them cry. I joke, but I'm absolutely serious. I told my dad, I love making people cry. And he was like, "What? Why? Like, are you sadistic?" No. When people are crying, it is the one and only time to me that they are being completely authentic. They are letting go. They are feeling the feelings. They are not worried about whether or not I judge them or care if what I think about them or if that their eyes are getting red and their nose is running and they're, you know, catching their breath. Girl, you do you. Yes. And it's such I have this story. This didn't happen to me. I was at work one evening and I overheard this gal talking on the phone. And to be honest, judgmental of me, I thought she was talking to a lousy boyfriend who was making her feel bad. And she was kind of like not arguing, but going back and forth with someone. And I thought, oh God, she should ditch that loser. He's obviously making her life miserable. And when she hung up, she was just sitting there and I thought, Morgan, you really have no idea what this girl is going through. And I just said that to her. I went up to her. I didn't know her. I still don't know her name. I never saw her again. I said, I don't know what's making you feel sad right now and making you cry. And I really feel like I want to hug you. Would that be okay with you? She said, yes, please. I told her and she cried. She told me that her sister was thinking about killing herself and she was trying to talk her out of it. But here she is at work trying to, do her job. And I left and I thought, huh, not only did I be vulnerable and just putting myself out there, because she could have said, girl, mind your business. I don't need a hug from you. No, I just thought, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there. I feel like I want to hug this girl and comfort her. I don't know why, but this is where I'm at right now with this. And I stopped judging her. And sure enough, it wasn't what I thought it was. So I put the judgment aside. I put my own hesitation aside, worried how she might respond to my vulnerability and saying, "Hey, can I hug you right now? It seems like you're hurting." And she let herself be vulnerable. And again, we didn't turn into best friends. I don't remember her name. I just remember that moment. And I wanted to be vulnerable and she responded in kind. And I would invite you to think about ways in which you're hesitating to feel all your feelings and maybe you go to therapy and I applaud you for that and you share vulnerably in therapy. That's awesome. It's a safe space to do that and learn the skills to do that in your real life. Perhaps you're vulnerable in your journal and you just lay it all out there and you write all the things. And maybe you keep your journals, maybe you burn them. I don't know. All I do know is it's like snake venom in a way. I think about City Slickers, the movie, if you've ever seen that. And the one guy gets bit in the rear end by a snake, and the guy's like, "Well, you got to suck out the venom," and he's like, "No." But I think about that because we oftentimes have things inside of us that are eating us up, and unless we get them out and just be authentic about it, it's going to continue to eat us up and poison us. That also brings me to a story when I was doing work as a therapist, and I was meeting with one of my mentors, and he had said he chatted with a gal who had been sexually abused as a kid and then got into abusive relationship where she was basically being sexually exploited and assaulted in her own personal relationship with this man, and finally got away from it and had gone to therapy, and she had never ever shared about the sexual abuse as a kid and the sexual abuse she had to endure in her relationship. And he said to her, "You've got to get it out. You've got to let the walls down and let all of this out, or it is going to eat you alive." And she finally, once she allowed herself to be strong enough, courageous enough to be vulnerable and share these things that she had been hiding deep inside, these feelings that she wasn't letting out, she could begin her healing journey. And that's an extreme example. What I'm talking about is being vulnerable in your everyday life. You know, if you're at the grocery store, I shocked a grocery store checkout guy once years ago. I used to live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I liked shopping at the old Kowalski's on Hennepin Avenue, 24/7. By the way, if you ever needed ice cream late at night, um, that was my go-to. And, I was not having a great day the one day I stopped in, and he said, "Hey, ma'am, how's your day today?" And I said, "You know, Kevin," or whatever his name was, "it's not the best day today. I'm having a hard time actually today." And he was a little flabbergasted and taken aback, and he's like, "Well, I'm sorry about that, ma'am. I sorry to hear that." And I said, "No problem. I'm just being honest with you. Like, it's not a great day, and Minnesota is known for its Minnesota nice. You know, everybody's all sunshine and rainbows. I thought I'm not today, and that's okay. It is okay. I don't want you to fix it. I don't need you to fix it. I'm just being honest. And that's how I am today." And it can be as benign as that. It can be your best friend or your partner saying something or doing something, and you can say, "You know, when you said that, I felt this. And I wanted to share that with you and process that with you. Is that okay?" Because otherwise we eat those feelings and then they start to eat us. And so I really truly it is an act of courage and just strength to be able to one identify your feelings and then to share them in an authentic way and not ever say you did this and because of you it's that. It's the I feel this when you say that or do that, or when your best friend says how are you and you say, "You know what, I'm having a really hard time. Can I tell you about it?" And if your friend's really good, he or she will say, "Do you want me to listen or do you want me to give you feedback and or advice?" Now that's an extra step to keep in mind if someone's being vulnerable with you, because sometimes people want to talk and they need to get the venom out. Other times they are looking for guidance. If you're in the position of being the receiver of someone's vulnerability, try to remember that and receive it in the way that they are looking for it. Maybe they just want to talk and help release those feelings. If you're the person being vulnerable, maybe say that up front. Right now, I just need to say the things out loud. I'm not looking for advice. I'm not looking for you to tell me what I should do. This just feels heavy. And can I unpack this backpack with you? Maybe process something with you. And that is courageous. That is strength rather than carrying it around like a heavy backpack, thinking that that's strength. It's not. It's just exhausting and it's going to hurt you in the end. Then you're going to need a chiropractor, right? All right. So think about ways in which you can be more vulnerable in your everyday life. First, with yourself, being able to recognize the feelings and say, I am feeling this way and it is okay. And then being authentic and honest with the people that you're around and be honest about how you're feeling and just share that. Take that chance because you are that strong. Go be vulnerable today. Thanks again for being here. Are you open to doing me a favor? Please hit that plus sign to follow this podcast, rate and review, and then share this podcast with at least one woman in your life that you care about.